Welcome to Fast Politics, Rick Wilson.
Molly Jong-Fast, how are you this fine day?
I am cycling through a pretty severe case of laryngitis, but I'm still moving.
But you know you're a damn professional, so you're gonna do the work and make it happen.
Not at least I'm not at CCOT yet.
You know, I do think the idea of cut would probably not be salutary for your health and your voice. It would probably not work out as well as some might think.
So let's talk about what this weekend has brought. The big
Mhm.
beautiful bill of buxom
Uh-huh.
billionaires bankrupting seemingly benevolent federal institutions
Yeah.
goes on.
Look, at the big beautiful bill, it's gonna turn out, I think, in a weird way. The fiscal impacts are gonna be catastrophic for the country. We're having all this new debt, the deficit, the bond market's already going, "Whoa, whoa, 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 ease up. What's this about?" But the stuff we're finding inside the big beautiful bill that's even crazier, like no regulation on AI for 10 years, and all these special carve outs for different companies and different people, and Bitcoin and all this other
Mm.
stuff that's just underneath the surface in this thing. I think it's gonna turn out to be an even uglier and more catastrophic and shittier outcome, even than the skeptics, and I certainly count myself among them. Even among what the skeptics of this bill thought would happen, it's looking much worse than than it did in the early going. And I think we're gonna end up, with the Senate, because Thune is saying to people basically, we're gonna juice this thing through there, and it's gonna happen. And look, all the brave people in the Senate, we know how that's gonna end. Every Republican's gonna vote for the damn thing, and a half a dozen Democrats are gonna vote for the damn thing. And I think it just
Really? I don't think a half a dozen Democrats are gonna vote for it.
Fetterman.
I mean, I think that it's gonna get changed. I mean, whether
Well,
or not it gets worse or
let's
better.
see. Yeah, okay, I will take that. I don't think they're necessarily gonna vote for the bill in its House form, but they're going to have the Senate's gonna have input on this, but I don't think it's gonna be something that really revises the worst aspects of it. I think it's gonna end up still being, a giveaway, a tax cut for Elon Musk I've beaten my head against the wall on this until I'm migrained. All of you Republicans who think you're getting a tax cut out of this bill, who do not happen to make over about $2 million a year, all of you who think you're getting a tax cut, some of you will be getting a tiny little taste that expires in 2 years. The costs at the top of the ticket are forever. Y'all's middle class tax cut is sunsetted. Enjoy.
So I'm not sure what's gonna happen next, but I wonder how much pushback would work on this. Like people going out there, because what we've seen in this administration is there's a reason Elon Musk is no longer running the federal government. And you can say he got what he wanted, but
He
I
didn't.
think he wanted to stay forever and ever.
I think
So
so too.
yeah. So now he is gone, and there was
Mhm.
a reason because he polled more poorly than the bubonic. So the
Correct.
question is,
Molly, that's 100% right. Elon wanted to keep playing with the levers of government. It's the perfect nerd
mm,
toy, right? He wanted to keep like tweaking things and playing with Doge and getting people's data, all this stuff. He reached the end of his runway. They were getting intolerant of him. You're right. He was as popular as the plague. People in Washington who were willing to wait him out finally lost patience, and a combination of Susie Wiles and Scott Bessent and a bunch of other folks at the cabinet level, none of whom singularly were as powerful as Elon Musk, but collectively they managed to change the public environment. And when they started leaking those stories that said Elon's on the way out, Elon is doomed, Musk did not understand what was happening to him in the DC world. Now look, he's going to try to come back in. He's going to try to stay in the orbit. He's going to try to stay as best buddy to the president, all those things that he kind of really enjoyed in this process so that he can continue with his fuckery. And I think he will have some marginal success with that. But look, he did get one set of things he wanted. He got rid of regulators who looked at Tesla.
right?
He got rid of regulations about self-driving cars. He got rid of regulations
But
about the
getting rid
Starship
of
rocket.
right, but again, like all of this, none of this is a fait accompli. All of this could change. All
Sure.
of this can, the more that people push back. I mean, it really does work, and that's what we
Mhm.
see. And a good example, I think, is the tariffs, right? I mean, the tariffs, obviously, Trump is completely crazy about tariffs,
Oh,
but they're ultimately, I think the market thinks, and maybe they're wrong, maybe they're right, that they can eventually wear him down to not do that. That they are threats, but not actual levers.
I didn't make this up, but I love it. The phrase that was floating around on Friday after Trump made more crazy tariff talk about Apple paying more and Europe paying more is taco. Trump always chickens out
Yeah.
on the tariffs. And that has been the pattern so far, which is why the markets have kept playing the roller coaster game where he says something crazy, the market reacts badly, he shuts up for 2 days, market comes back, he waits a little bit, says something crazy. We this roller coaster. But if the taco rule actually works and if the taco rule holds up, then the markets are anticipating we will be out of this tariff window in some reasonably short period of time. I don't think that's true. I think it's crap. I think he's going to absolutely keep playing with the tariff stuff because he's obsessive about it. And it's like one of the only things you and I talked about this before. It's one of the only things he believes in. You know, he doesn't believe it a lot, but for whatever reason, in his weird, fucked up history, he believes
I
in
mean,
tariffs.
I am not gonna try to predict the future, but I will say that you have accurately predicted the future with one thing very well. So I'm gonna read you a headline from Fortune, and I think you're gonna appreciate it.
Okay.
Influencer, excuse me, I run a dog kennel for those of you who hear little boo boo in the background. Influencer who attended Trump's Memecoin dinner says he got a quote, Walmart steak and no access to the president. Discuss.
Look, I've seen the photos. It is a it is a piece of meat that if it was being rated by the FDA would have been substandard but edible with a piece of fish and some mashed potatoes and a carrot. If you're paying $1 million+ for that dinner, I can recommend any number of Michelin restaurants that would do a lot better for you with many fewer zeros involved in the bill.
Trump
Um,
organic field green salad, an
uh,
entree duet of filet mignon and pan-seared halibut. Everyone at my table was saying the food was some of the worst food they'd ever had.
It looked like dorm food. It
Uh,
looked like dorm food. It looked like it wasn't quite prison food, but it looked like dorm food. And this is the classic thing about Trump. When you go to one of his clubs or his golf courses, they have like the from a mile away, they look like what Trump believed classy things look like. And Trump's the only kind of person in the world who would use words like classy without
right.
irony. But when you get up close, it's garbage. It's all, it's all a very thin sheen of Timu style ornamentation and decoration. You know, the Oval Office is the shit in the Oval Office came from fucking Hobby Lobby. You know, just it's not so it shouldn't surprise these crypto guys that that they are now on the next generation of suckers that Donald Trump has suckered. And look, the scope of his corruption is increasing. It is certainly vastly wider than it was in 2016. Back in or 2017, in the first term, back then he was like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to stay in my hotel and pay me $10,000 a night."
It's gotten a
Now,
little more sophisticated.
there's some more zeros on the end, and they are the Trump boys are absolutely using the perceived threat of Trump's anger and sanction against folks like the companies in Vietnam. If you read the Times this morning, Vietnam has fast tracked a Trump golf resort through this environmentally sensitive area because they want to keep Donald Trump happy and they want him to undo the trade sanctions. So they're buying a shit ton of Starlinks and letting Trump build a golf course. The corruption is kind of crude and clownish, but it is this is the best business Trump has ever run. This big scam, this griftorama is the best business Trump has ever run.
So let's talk a little bit about what's happening now with Trump and this grift. I just want to do one more question about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
dinner because at this dinner, people complained that they didn't actually like. So the complaints from sort of ethics watchdogs,
Right.
whatever few are left, was like they're buying access to the president. But because this is Trump and everything Trump touches dies, they actually didn't even get to meet him or Elon. So
Right.
he was selling access and they didn't even get the access.
Look, what are they gonna do? Sue him? No. Complain? He might regulate them then. Because look,
Right.
we all know Trump can turn on a dime on any issue. He used to be anti-crypto and now he's pro-crypto.
Yeah.
And so these guys are going to pretend this was, or this was this is an error or a mistake, and they'll shake his hand next time. But uh, this is another part of this that I think is really important, and Trump loves to look down on people who buy into his shtick.
Right.
But let's remember that he said to his staff during the last administration, his own followers, they're crazy. These people are crazy. Trump has always looked down on the suckers who buy into the Trump myth. These crypto guys, they are tech folks, but essentially he's relying on the fact that they are at a certain level fundamentally unsophisticated people when it comes to understanding that he will screw them.
Right.
It's only that we can look at a 50-year history of Donald Trump's business dealings and see that in every single case, he has fucked his business partners, he has screwed his vendors, he has screwed people that built these projects of his, and it never stops. It has never once stopped. And so these new crypto folks who are like, oh, we're gonna buy Trump coin and all,
But why does
unless you're just buying him to bribe him, unless it's just for the bribe.
why has everyone forgotten what Trump 1.0 was like? I mean, like, it wasn't even that long ago,
No.
but it seems like, let's look back to the people who were in that administration. Like,
Mhm.
Rudy Giuliani was a central tenant.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy, what even happened to him?
Look, Rudy is now, out sending desperate emails to conservative email lists saying the deep state's still trying to put me in jail. All right, well, maybe you shouldn't be a fucking idiot. But look, everybody who's gone through the cycle of Trump learns lessons. I mean, think about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, one of the most loyal, obsequious Trump people during and after. And is he sending Arkansas any federal aid for these hurricanes and stuff? No. Or tornadoes and stuff? No. Look at Tennessee, a loyal Trump state. They get any help? No. Look at North Carolina, a state that voted for Trump repeatedly. He cut off the rest of the FEMA aid for Hurricane Helene cleanup, and Western North Carolina is still a real mess. Roads are still out, bridges are still out, and Trump just said, "Nope, no more for you." Everybody who he builds a bond of trust with, he is contemptuous of them. He hates them because they trust him. He knows who he is more than they know who he is I guess how I'd put it.
So, yeah, it's a really important point, and I think so does that make you less despairing about the state of American democracy?
No, I still think we're in some deep water. I really do, because like it or not, he still has 3 years left.
It's true.
And while I'm concerned about the systemic kinds of things, the Project 2025 kind of stuff, that should concern all of us, by the way. I'm also concerned that he is so random and his brain is so broken. And again, no one was earlier on this than George Conway back in 2016, and a lot of those folks who were saying this guy's unstable, this guy's unstable, this guy's brain is rot. And I, in writing a piece last week about, preparing for a video piece I did on Friday, can we stop lying about Trump's dementia? Can we stop lying to ourselves about it? I watched a couple of hours of speeches and remarks for the last 3 weeks, and I came out of that writing like I thought I was going to write something, pretty harsh, but maybe, with a little bit of a flourish. I didn't have to. I actually had to back it down because he's so incoherent. I mean, yesterday at over the weekend rather, at West Point, he's out there talking about trophy wives and
Right. The
rambling about
same
how these guys are
but
going to
it
make
was
so
the
much
same
money.
speech it was the same speech he gave at the Boy Scout
Yep.
Jamboree, right?
And
Um,
his brain does not, it's not
but
firing.
this
So that's when he's
but
gonna
this
do random shitty things,
but
and those
this
can be pretty bad
speaks
for the country too.
yeah, but in some ways, that's actually a little bit better than the sort of Heritage Foundation, super organized.
Right.
None of this is three-dimensional chess. It's always just him eating the checkers. But I do wanna go back to the idea of his incoherence because he was actually quite incoherent in 2016,
Mhm,
and one of the things that I remember writing about him, his speaking so much was that when you started looking at the text of the speech, it was just shocking, and that's why this White House, I think, has
mhm.
stopped publishing transcripts.
Right, and taking the prior transcripts offline.
Yeah.
And I I'm gonna have a guy next week who we did cap they've all been captured. They're out there on the Internet Archive and other places. I'm gonna have a guy next week do an AI analysis of Trump's public speeches and statements that aren't prepared remarks and compare them to 2020 and 2016. Because I as a guy who's, sadly had so much of Trump in my brain for the last 10 years, I can see the diminishment and the drop off. I can see the chaos level of his thought process is getting more and more stochastic and more and more, shambolic. He's really a mess, and no one wants to admit it, and no one wants to, look, the Trump world has always had this powerful illusion in MAGA that Trump is the smartest, most experienced negotiator, the best deal maker, the best businessman, the richest guy. It's all been bullshit. But when he comes out and starts herbal burble mumble bumble, it doesn't. It's harder for them to say, "Oh, that's the genius." Somebody told me that getting an hour out of an interview with Hannity with Trump took them like 6 hours to try to get an interview that wasn't bonkers, that wasn't like Trump, you know, going off on 10-minute tangents about his friend Jim in Paris or whatever.
It is, yeah. I mean, look, his inability to focus has always been a real issue. Rick Wilson, I'm gonna keep you around, so don't leave. Will you come back?
Of course I'll come back. You know
Okay.
me. I'm your huckleberry.